Welcome to another chapter of In the Keep. I'm your very own prophet of the drowned god, the Motherlode, and this show is all about the world of first-person shooters, their legacies, their lineage, and the people who keep that world turning. It is the will of the drowned god Katala that we band together to frag and jib one another into oblivion for all eternity. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the episode. I want to first off say thank you to all the Patreon supporters, even the new ones. So Dots, Moose, Paul, Zach, Alexander, and Lashaka, we greatly appreciate everything that you've given and the commitment that you're showing and all that stuff to the show. It's really great, and it's the lifeblood of this podcast. So again, greatly appreciate you. And for all the Patreon supporters, please make sure that you do put your t-shirt sizes on your profiles and Patreon so that when we do get these shirts ordered, which should be within the first quarter of this year, that we can send them to you in the appropriate size and order them correctly. And also just a reminder to everybody else that the Patreon supporters do get episodes early. So that's a perk of being a Patreon supporter of any amount. It doesn't matter which amount that you decide to give. That is a perk that applies to all Patreon supporters, patrons, whatever they're fucking called. Patrons. I think that's what they're actually called. That said, if you want to give in some other way, there's nothing wrong with giving through PayPal or credit card or whatever, if you choose to. And if you don't want to or you can't, that's totally fine as well. We're not trying to extort anybody for money here. It's just money that goes into this community and into the production of what we do here. So if you would like to participate in that, that's cool. If you don't, just enjoy the ride. No harm, no foul. And the best way that you can support is just to tell other people about the show. Forget sending money to us, but actually supporting the show by shouting it from the rooftop or whatever you decide to do. However, telling your pal on the bus next to you, like, hey, you heard this podcast and you seem like you like first-person shooters. Maybe you'd like this show. I don't know. Do whatever you want. And if you do give a substantial amount, like through one of those ways, and you feel like, hey, like don't be afraid at all to reach out to me, and I'll be like, hey, yeah, we'll get you, a shout on the podcast or whatever. That's fine too. It's got to be easy to manage, and sometimes the easiest thing to manage is for you to just tell me, like, straight up. And I'm not some like crazy person who thinks I've got it all under control, because I totally don't, guys. Just another human being, just like everybody else. Speaking of not having all under control, I got to admit that I did fuck up the Amazon affiliate link. It's probably broken when you're listening to this if I haven't fixed it already, but the point being, we're working on getting the one link to actually work so that our international supporters can use it. I know we've been having issues with the .com link doesn't link to like the German, French, Italian, Spanish, UK, and Canadian accounts. I think I named them all, but if not, whatever. The point being, we're working on getting that to work, so just bear with us. Hopefully, by the next roll around of an episode, we'll get that fixed. If it's not already fixed by the time this comes out, who fucking knows? And okay, final announcement, and then we'll get into the interview, I promise. All right, we've got the Warfork Open Duel Tournament on January 11th. You have to get into the Keep's Discord, which should be linked to our website, inthekeep.com, as well as all the other links that I just mentioned before. And you can get all the details on that, when it's happening, what the rules are going to be and everything. Your point of contact will again be Zeb. Again, this is not invitational. This one is open, so anyone can join. And I think the top certain number of people, Zeb will give you the details with this. The top certain number of people from this one will go on to another invitational that we'll do with a pretty significant prize pool, I'm thinking, down the road. It's just something to keep in mind. Anyway, let's talk about this episode. It's too much rambling for me. Brad Carney is back on the show, and if you don't know who he is, I mean, he's been everywhere and done everything. He made Skulltag, one of the coolest Doom source ports of all time, apparently. I wasn't there, but apparently it was great. It is the predecessor to what is now Xandronum. I'm sure you've heard of that if you're a Doom person. If not, go check it out. Get yourself some Doom Seeker action going on. It's great. It's really fun. Then he also worked on Wrack, and then more recently Wrack Exoverse. Wrack Exoverse was sales wise, it was a disappointment, and so I wanted to get Brad back on, not only to talk about just what that whole experience has been like and what he's doing now, which is exciting new stuff, and I think that you'll enjoy hearing about that, but also because he's just a guy who comes up so often. And the last time I talked to him, I had to leave the room early because at QuakeCon and I was really rushed and everything, and I just felt guilty. And then over time, just more and more and more people kept saying his name to me, and I was like, God, I got to get this guy back on. I finally did. It was a great chat. I've always enjoyed talking to Brad, and I hope you enjoy listening to him. I know he is a controversial figure amongst some circles, but you know what? I say put that shit aside for now and just give him a chance to speak on his own behalf, and I think that you'll arrive at the same conclusion that I have, that like, hey, Brad's a good dude. Music this week is by the king of ominous, dark, evil, noise, wonderfulness. His name is Amorpher. I hope you enjoy this track, and without any further ado, let's get in the heat with Brad Carney. Brad Carney, it's good to have you back on the podcast, dude.
It's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
I gotta be honest, dude. I feel bad about the way that we did the last one because I had to step out of the room and just leave you with the torture of Bones and Dew for that period of time.
They were great. Like, I mean, that wasn't your fault. Like, that was a total impromptu thing we did, and it's. I mean, had we known we were going to do the podcast, maybe we would have done it earlier, so you wouldn't have to step out. But how did that go, by the way?
Oh, it was terrible. It was not worth it at all. I should have stayed with you.
Oh, that sucks.
It was. We just had so many technical issues that night. For anybody not following, I had to leave the previous interview with Carney at QuakeCon because I was going to cast a tournament for State of Quake, and when I got there, it was just everything that could go wrong went wrong tech wise. Like, the OBS was just not picking up microphones and things were going in and out. The tournament itself went great. For some reason, like with no guidance, the players just figured out how to do it. But it was a great time, except that I got pissed off and just like, I'm fucking going to the smoke pit. Fuck this. About halfway through.
Yeah, I mean, they were doing Doom tournaments like earlier that day at QuakeCon, and there were tons of issues with those as well. But it's hard, those events, it's like, it's hard to kind of prepare for those because like it's not a situation you're in very often. So it's very easy for a lot of technical things to go wrong.
It's hard to troubleshoot things like that on the fly.
Yeah.
When there's so much going on around you, the whole room is just filled with noise and everything. I'm used to quietly, like at my own pace. I'll get up and go take a piss when I feel like it, kind of thing. But like QuakeCon, everything's on. Everything's very, I don't know how to put it. Pressure's on.
Yeah. And like 20 different people coming up to you constantly like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on?
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
But that's enough of that shit, man. I got to ask you straight up, where are we right now with Final Boss Entertainment?
Basically kind of not existing. So we did the first Wrack game. It was almost a success. It kind of shows some potential. But it didn't really reach the level of success I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. So we kind of felt like we were a little too close to Doom. It's like we were making a game that was like very Doom-like, but it seemed like most people just cared about Doom and wanted to play Doom. Like, it seemed like they didn't necessarily care about like a new entry in the genre. So we were like, all right, fine. Well, we got some good things going for us. Let's, try and retool that and try and do something new and interesting. So that's when we went with the the tower defense game, Exoverse, which released fully. I guess no longer this year. We're recording this on the 3rd, but released late last year, and so we tried to do something different, and then that didn't really hit it all either. We're just kind of at a point now where it's like we don't have the resources to really stay in the game and try again. It just seems like there's absolutely no interest in anything we're doing really. So that's kind of where we are. I've kind of been working just kind of like on a side thing. It's kind of like a retooling of the original rack. It's basically kind of what it is right now. It's like if the original rack was like a roguelike. So like it's kind of like Exoverse minus like the tower defense stuff and the building mazes and that sort of thing. So so you're kind of like exploring different rooms, and it's like procedurally generated and stuff. Which I guess there is like an Immortal Redneck and what's the other one I'm thinking of? Project Warlock.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm kind of just doing this as like a side thing. Like I don't have any or I'm not like heavily invested in this. I'm not gonna spend years and tens of thousands of dollars on this. And plus I got a new job coming up. I'm gonna go be working at Ubisoft, which I'm really excited about. But it's unfortunate, but it's kind of where we are. Probably had I known like there was like potential, like, hey, if I just tweak a couple things instead of like a lot of things, it's like maybe with some tweaks, the original rack could have been better received. I mean, like rack came up like before Dusk did, and like obviously Dusk and a couple other games, like really hit it huge. And I think those really taught me a lot. It just taught me like people were looking for like a really authentic old school experience. It's like we're necessarily looking for like something like super new, and well, it's just like something like just very heavily appeals to nostalgia. It's like a Dusk is like very Quake like in its aesthetic. It's like we were trying to go for something a little more modern, and I don't think I don't think that's something that this audience really wanted. So
I don't know, man. That was a beautifully long-winded way of putting it, but I feel like Rack just landed wrong in some way, because the thing is when I talk to people, and I didn't realize this the first time I talked to you, and part of the reason that I wanted to have you back on the show is not just my guilt for walking out of the room the first time we talked, but because of slowly over time, I've been doing this podcast for right around a year now, and more people I talk to, especially in the Doom community, obviously you have a foothold there. Your name comes up constantly, and not just like a little bit, but like too much. It's like, okay, there's more to this guy than I had any idea there really was. And Rack is one of those games that like it, on the surface, it looks like not a lot of people played it, but a lot of people talk about it. Yeah.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But a lot of people are talking about it all the time. So like, okay, so clearly a lot of people, well, in our circles, yes. And that may be a small group of people, but it made an impact, and it definitely set a trend for what we're seeing now. We talked about that a little bit in the previous interview, which I had to go back and re-listen to a bit of, because I think I was drunk at the time, but I could be wrong. But I think that
it was an event. I probably was too.
Yeah, I think we all were. Definitely had some we had some drinks before.
Yeah.
But for some reason Rack just left an impact, and it has a legacy that maybe won't be remembered as everybody played this game, but will be remembered as like it set a trend for other things to come. And it in fact did. There are a tremendous amount. Like right now is the golden age of FPS games that look like older FPS games, or play like older FPS games.
I think like we really went for it. Like we really took like a really hard stab at what we tried to do. It's a game we spent like 6 years on, and like we really tried to go for it. It's like custom engine. We had our own level editor. It's like we were really trying to recreate a lot of like what was really popular in the original Doom, and it's kind of been lacking in recent years. So like we really super went for it, and and the fact that it kind of fell flat, I think I think it gave a pretty clear indication to other developers that like, hey, like there are some things that they're doing that like people clearly don't want, and they were able to kind of take that and like retool it and do some things slightly differently. I think they were able to have some success once they did that. It's like when I was searching for like Rack in the like New Blood Discord, it's like one of the comments that came up was like, Rack had to fail so that Dusk could succeed. It's like,
true, 100%.
True. I totally agree with it. So.
Yeah. There's always going to be stuff like that. There's always like the band that played this, like heavy metal before Black Sabbath came out. Like, Blue Cheer, one of these bands that like if it has been lost to time, but realistically they started a genre. Yeah. Or at least played, something similar to what everybody later on decided they wanted.
Someone's got to blaze that trail so others can come behind in full force. And
yeah. And then just to take a step further, it's not just Rack, but like your name comes up way too fucking much, man. You're like so deep into this shit. Like you just said, you're going to go on and work at Ubisoft and everything. You're like the quintessential everyman of game design. Like you just, who the fuck is this guy? I don't know. He's been around for fucking ever. He's done everything but he's never been famous for it. And you deserve to be. There's everybody in the Doom community knows who you are. They either love you or hate you, and there's a lot on either side. And I don't give a fuck either way. I think you're a great guy. But
well, thank you. I have been around like for a long time. It's like I mean, the very first Skulltag I ever did was like it was like before like source ports were even a thing. This is in like 1996. Like probably before you were born. Like it was like
95.
Okay, there you go. But it was on like a BBS's, which is kind of like the predecessors to like the internet. It's like it was like basically like a little like mini internet that you'd like call into like in your phone line. Like it was insane. It was all text based and everything. But it was basically like it was the same kind of like Skulltag gameplay where it's like you grab the flag, except in this case it's a skull, and instead of taking it back to your base, you go through like a little obstacle course and tag it on the pillar. It's kind of how it gets the name Skulltag. But it's like we were doing that in like co-op mode, so you could have like player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4 like starts that like are always in the same spot. Because this is before you could have like red team start, blue team start. So it was a long time. Like I think like dog tag was like the thing that like came right before it, and I was kind of like, oh, it's a cool idea, but I have a different idea for how to do this, and that's kind of where the original Skulltag came from. And then like the Carmack released a source port or source code. We were able to start making source ports, and I mean even around like 2000, it's like that's when the more modern Skulltag started getting started. But it was 20 years ago now. It's a long time ago.
Well, let's go a step further. You made Skulltag. Skulltag is what Xandronum, which is, as much as I hate to admit this, being like I am a Z Damon guy at heart, but Xandronum is like the premier way that people play multiplayer Doom now. Like that is just a fact. And it's not the product that we ended up with, but you created the thing that inspired or was the predecessor to the thing that everybody likes now. What is up with that, dude? Why are you constantly getting the short end of the stick with this? That's what there's so much more to you. There has to be something else.
Well, I think
you're a pioneer.
I think my interests like don't entirely align with the majority maybe of players like in the Doom community. Like I was always wanting to like kind of push things forward. Instead of kind of going with it's like I don't want to like maintain the status quo. I always wanted to push things forward. I wanted to try and make improvements like to the gameplay and add new things and do different things. So it's I can see how that would be not appealing to some. Like for a long time, it's like Z Damon was number one, and a lot of people were not really looking for new things with their multiplayer Doom experience. There's a lot of purists out there. There's a lot of people who kind of prefer the classic gameplay and don't really want it meddled with. I can give you a great example of that. It's like one of the things that a lot of players of Doom specifically really love is like spawn camping. So yeah, I put a thing in to add like just like a brief moment of like invulnerability for new people when they spawn in. So like they can't just get jacked by a super shotgun the instant they spawn. So they actually have like a second to kind of get their bearings, and like it would disable like if you like picked up a weapon, so you don't have like some kind of unfair advantage. Being invulnerable and the other person isn't. But a lot of people hated that. And I kind of thought like that was the thing where it's like, no, this is objectively better. I don't know why you guys are arguing for like spawn camping, but it's just kind of like a personal preference thing. It's like some people are going to like that, some people aren't, and I kind of took a stab at what I thought was right. But it takes people time to adapt to that and get on board with that, and it's it's change is rough sometimes. And, not everyone is on board with that, and I think that's probably why it wasn't number one right off the bat. It took people time to get on board with the new game modes we were adding, and it took people time to like make mods and content that Skulltag did a great job of accommodating. So it's I don't know. It was kind of the same with the Wrack too. It's like we really went for it. We tried to do some new things, and I don't know. People just kind of wanted the comfort of the same old.
No, people are always going to be resistant to change in some way, some form. But the fact of the matter is that if you think that Doom was perfect upon launch, first of all, my opinion, you're wrong. I mean, maybe that's fine. I wasn't there for it, and I couldn't possibly remember what it was like. But if it's anything not like what it is now, then I'm going to be upset because it's not what I was, introduced to. And I think that's going to be the same for every single person. Like you get used to whatever you like or whatever you were first exposed to, and then so now we have like the first multiplayer Doom I ever saw. In fact, the first modded Doom I ever saw was in Xandronum. I'd never seen anything but vanilla Doom before that, and so to go back to we're just only going to play exactly as it was perfectly released, maybe Chocolate Doom or something like that. For me, it doesn't feel like the right thing to do, but for some people, that's all they want, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I support their right to do that.
It all just comes down to personal preference. It's like there's no such thing as like this is objectively better, this is objectively worse. Like there's really no such thing.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of funny. It's like you see that in like a Star Wars too. It's like there's the original trilogy, which is pretty much universally loved, and then George tries to do something bold and ambitious, and
why are you
everything with the prequel trilogy, and
you're really fucking me up, dude. I just saw the episode 9. I don't want to talk.
Oh, what'd you think?
God damn it. Okay. It's fucking terrible. It's so bad. It's objectively a bad movie. That's my opinion. Erase the Star Wars from it. I just think it's not good. That's just me. People can send all their hate mail if they want to, or probably more people. I think more people will agree with me. But
I think you're gonna find plenty of agreement.
Yeah. Moving on. Let's not talk about that. I've heard a few different people tell me that they were originally trying to make games that they later made on something else in the Wrack engine itself. What's up with that? Like, were you shopping it out to people, or were people approaching you saying like, "Hey, I'd like to use your engine"?
Did that happen?
Oh shit! Okay,
that's news to me. If that's happened,
forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn. I think Wadaholic maybe was talking about using the Wrack engine to make. Yeah, I believe. God, I could be so wrong. People are gonna be like avid listeners of the podcast are gonna be like, well, "How do you not remember your own podcast?" Like, well, several episodes ago.
Hey, as someone who's done a podcast before, it's easily it's my answer.
I think Total Chaos had some aspirations with the Wrack engine. If I'm not totally off here, hold on. Let me keep the conversation going in that aspect, though.
But yeah, like that's something like
No, stop.
Okay.
It was Doombringer.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. It was a long time ago, and he's since switched to doing his own thing.
It's the Quake engine now. He
Yeah.
upgraded from a Doom engine to the Quake engine.
But yeah, it's. I think when we first started, that was kind of something that was in the back of our head. Like, hey, it'd be cool if other people could, go ahead and like make games with this engine. It's we're making it super moddable, and just the source code is super clean, just everything. But and then times change. It's like, hey, we have Unity and Unreal now. Like, there's I don't know, there's real no point in not using one of those if you're just kind of like a hobbyist, or even a little more serious than that, or hell, even if you're a big studio. And I mean, a lot of AAA games are used in Unreal these days. So it's I don't know. It's things change, and it's like when we first started. It's funny. Engines weren't a thing, and Kickstarter wasn't a thing. Both of which probably would have helped immensely with the Wrack development process. So,
I'm working at Ubisoft, and I imagine you're going to get very, very familiar with the Unreal Engine quickly.
I would imagine. I don't I don't entirely know what they use there, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was that.
Are you allowed to say like what you're going to be doing, or like, share details?
I don't even know what I'm going to be doing. So even if I was allowed to, like,
serving coffee.
No. I think my title is like generalist programmer. So like they're going to put me to work on whatever. But like the thing is, like, it's not like this particular studio I'm going to. It's not like it's more like tools and stuff. It's not like working on a game directly. So
no, that's actually cool. You'll be like just software essentially.
Yeah. I'm super looking forward to it. So it's kind of like almost more of like an engine kind of thing, instead of like game design or anything like that. And it should be removed from like crunch, I would think. But I'm really looking forward to it. Like, that's just being able to take a step back from all the hardcore game development and design I've done over all this time, and just kind of take a step back. I mean, it's gonna be really nice.
This is a really interesting development in the whole thing, because like I think maybe 1 or 2 episodes ago I was just talking about Ghost Recon, and like Ubisoft is one of those companies that, like, people are going to have their opinion about them as a company in one way or the other. I don't really give a fuck. Has made their honest to goodness contribution to the first person shooter genre over and over again. I've been playing Ghost Recon games since I was I don't know, maybe 8 years old with my dad.
Right.
Rainbow Six. I mean, who could deny that as one of the most amazing esports that's out there? Although I don't personally play it, that doesn't matter. Like, this is going to be cool, dude. I'm actually really proud to hear this.
I'm looking forward to it. It's funny. Like, it's such a big company, and like they have such a big catalog. It's like, I still got to like
dance.
Yeah. It's like, Assassin's Creed is like the big one that comes to mind for me. But I'm gonna have to really look through the catalog and see. I was even wondering, it's like, do I get like an employee discount like on some of these games? Because I like to check them out. But yeah, it's gonna be cool. But it's I don't know. Like I with Exoverse, it's like it was so much like so much of like what I did was like just engine work, because like it's like we actually had more artists this time around, so I didn't have to worry about like making all the levels myself and all that. So I really got to work on like optimizing and designing systems and everything. So it's the fact that I get to do more of that, I think is going to be super cool.
Let's talk about Exoverse itself.
Sure.
The hard question right off the bat, just to get it out of the way, is what went wrong?
I think we forgot about what made Wrack appealing in the first place. It's a very. I think I was too focused on what we did wrong and I wasn't focused enough on what we did right. So I think we probably threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm.
It's we had a new, like, we tried to go for like something that was like new and interesting, and I think something about the game didn't hook people. Like we didn't ever really get the reaction we wanted from people. We're like, oh, that's a cool idea. Like, oh, I want to check that out. So it's like we could never really get to the next step with anyone. So it's I think there's a good game in there, but like, I don't know, like the fact that like no one kind of cared about it to even like give it a shot. And I'm talking about like media people, so we gave a bunch of keys out to YouTubers and stuff, and just almost no one with any kind of following really took a look at it. So it's as a result, it's like we didn't get like any feedback or anything, so we don't know what we need to fix. We don't. It just kind of sucked all the life out of everything, and I kept going with it as long as I could. Trying to turn things around, trying to fix whatever issues I could with it, but it just seemed like the idea was just a non-starter. It's, which I think is unfortunate. Like I think there's probably an audience out there that would like it, but it's certainly not the old school shooter audience, which is kind of our base.
I mean, first and foremost, you never know when someone's gonna just like pick up a game and like retro review it, and then people pick up on it. Anything could happen in this day and age.
Sure, yeah, I could.
But that said, my personal opinion was always kind of like, hey, great idea. Like, sounds like a really ambitious, cool idea. I think I used the word ambitious like a million times when I was talking about it. But that said, ambitious sometimes means like I felt there's too much going on in the game. Like there's a lot of ideas here, and none of them felt necessarily like saw through.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a lot of that was just like we're just kind of throwing a lot of shit at the wall and hoping it was gonna stick. Because it's like we kind of had that like same issue come up with Wrack, where it's like oh god, it's like this isn't hooking people. Oh my god, we need to do something. Do finishers, it's go ahead.
If I can tie it up in a bow, actually, sure. My thought process is like Wrack felt like a Doom clone, sort of. Wrack Exoverse, it felt like a Doom mod that wasn't finished. Like there's people are like, check out this really sweet new mod where you can do you can do all these fucking things. Like there's a million different things you can do with it. I'm like, cool, but like, what's the end game? And like, we never really got to that.
Yeah, I mean, not be able to like really finish it. It's just it was. I mean, it's really heartbreaking. It's. I mean, we had all these plans and things we wanted to do, and then it's like you get about 40% into it, and then it's just the interest is just DOA, and it's like it's hard. People are going to hold it against you if you don't finish it. So you do your absolute best to try and get across the finish line, and then you do the best you can, and to those people it's still not good enough, and it's like I don't know what to tell you. It's like we did the best we could. It's like we don't have infinite resources, like and it's I mean, when things are going poorly, I think that kind of thing hurts morale too. It's I mean, at first people are excited about working on it, and then they see that it's not selling or doing anything, and there's no interest, and I think those people kind of check out too and phone it in, and that's it just creates a negative feedback loop, which is really unfortunate. But it's like we knew we had like the same issue with Wrack, where it's like if we don't finish this, like it's going to be like this is a trend. They don't finish their games, and people never trust us again. So it's like we really really tried hard to get as much done as we could. It's just it's still fell short.
Ah, man, you've got an excellent track record behind you at this point. Like you can at the very least prove to anyone that you're going to be hired by, or that if you decide to pitch a future project or anything like that, you have clear. Like I can build and complete a game. I've built my own engine. I've built a game with a legacy, whatever that legacy may be. It exists, I mean, just think about like the sheer number of games that came out before Wolfenstein was created. You know, between the John Carmack and John Romero, or anyone, like anybody's, you have to have a million failures before you reach a whatever the goal ends up being, or whatever your masterpiece ends up being.
Right.
And I think you got your whole life ahead of you.
Well, I hope so. But yeah, it's I mean, that's kind of what you said. It's kind of been the plan going forward. You know, it's like I've kind of come to realize that, you know, hey, my life isn't over. You know, it's like I'm gonna go. I get this great job coming up that I'm looking forward to, and, you know, like all this has led to that. So like it hasn't all been for nothing.
I mean, publicly, I have to say, you've handled this so well. You've been nothing but positive vibes. I'm sure you're pulling your hair out at some, you know, there's got to be some kind of hard times in there, like fuck, but like.
well, I'll say this. That happened. Well, for the early access release, that was kind of my reaction for Exoverse. But you know, from that point, you know, it's kind of like the shock already set in. You know, I kind of knew, you know, it's you know, when we had our full release and we sold 9 copies on release day. You know, there wasn't much, you know, hair pulling out. It was just kind of acceptance. You know, it's like I'm sure there's you know, something of you know, 12 stages of dealing with grief or whatever. You know, it's like the first step is the yelling and the denial, and you know, by the end I was at acceptance. So plus, for the most part, I've just completely pulled back because, like, I don't know, like social media, it's like, what's the point of posting anything? It's like, you know, maybe a couple people, you know, think like that's something you say is funny or whatever, but it's a lot of downside to it too. You know, it's like people can use it against you or fire you, or just you know, dig through it later in 3 years. Like, oh my God, 3 years ago, this guy said this thing, which now we don't think is acceptable.
I was just telling AF Domains earlier today, I was kind of describing my approach to sharing things on social media, and it's like taking a poop. It's like approach the discharge area, drop off the package, hit the button, leave the room. Don't look back. Yeah. Like, don't ask questions. Because I mean, the small scale that even this podcast has been on is like, there sometimes the negative feedback's not even worth looking at.
Right.
And, you know, and granted, like sometimes I take it and I'm like, okay, I could improve on X, Y, or Z, but if it's just blatant negativity for no reason, who has time for that? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I see, I would always try and like look at the feedback and like, I don't know, maybe this is why, maybe this had a net negative impact, but my philosophy was always like, you know, you have to listen to feedback. Like, you have to, you know, it's like, you can't have a thin skin about it. You know, it's like, you're out there like to, you know, please your, you know, customers or audience or whoever. So like, you have to know like if they're happy or if they're upset, you know, and like if they're upset, they're going to tell you. And like, you have to, you know, try and, you know, parse through that, whatever beneficial lessons you can. So I don't know, but you know, like there is definitely a whole like positive side and philosophy to don't read the comments, you know, but I don't know. To me, it's like I want that feedback. I want to know if I'm doing a good job or if I'm screwing up. Or
I would say there's a big difference between someone who comments and has a legitimate thing to say about the product or whatever it happens to be, like someone reviewing one of your games. Perhaps if they'd really played it, you can tell the difference between that and someone who's just saying something negative for the sake of doing so.
Right.
And that happens a lot. And I don't know how much of that have you even dealt with, like, really?
Like, well, I was gonna say, like, you know, it's like, to me, like the opposite of like, you know, like positive comments. This isn't even like negative comments. It's no comments. It's apathy, which is, I mean, honestly, with Exoverse, like the thing that was the toughest with it was just like twisting in the wind. You know, it's like, you know, you put something out there, you know, you see how many like likes you're getting, how much interaction you're getting, like none. You know, it's see what kind of comments people have, see what discussion threads are going, none. You know, it's like, see what people are saying in Discord, nothing. You know, it's like, if someone has like something to say, like some like kind of negative feedback, like I can deal with that. It's like, oh, okay, so like this isn't working. This is I should tweak this, blah blah. Okay, like I can deal with that. But when it's just like no one cares, like, that to me that's like a really tough thing to deal with, because it's just like you just feel all alone, and it's like, it's like, hello, does anyone care? Am I just like throwing time away working on this? Like, what's going on, guys? Okay. It's like no one will respond to you, and it's just, I don't know, like to me that's it's way worse than like, you suck, this game is bad. So.
Let's get out of the negative rut a little bit. And,
okay, all right.
So the new side project. I understand that you've brought UberGewei onto the team. A good friend of mine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that you brought?
No. I didn't know you two were friends.
We just we made friends recently. He was on an episode of our YouTube show Maps of Madness. We talked about his Christmas Z-Daemon wads over the years.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah. So no, great guy, super antler, whatever you want to call him. But how did you end up picking him out to be on your team, and what's he going to be doing?
He's friends with our texture artist Remco. So I believe he's a Dutch guy. With a name like a UberGewei. Sounds pretty Dutch to me. Or
he's Dutch.
Yeah.
Lots of Haducant in his diet.
Probably very bearded, but anyway. But yeah, so he just comes like very highly recommended from our texture artist, who I think actually knows him like in person. And so he's going to be doing the levels. And it's honestly like I haven't really done much in a month, just because like I've gonna have disposable income for the first time, and I'm catching up on my Steam library and everything, plus the holidays and everything. But it's like one of the things I have been thinking of is like maybe just dropping the whole roguelike thing and just make a straight up just kind of non-roguelike campaign shooter, kind of like the original Wrack. So I guess it really would be like Wrack 2 or whatever. But it's, I mean, kind of part of my thinking for that is like, it's a lot easier to like tweak the levels and gameplay when it's all like static. It's very easy to like go into a particular room and like adjust things if that one room isn't working out. But it's hard when like all the pieces are constantly moving. When the levels are constantly being shuffled around and everything. It's a lot harder to go in and tweak things that way. But yeah, he comes highly recommended. Well, we haven't totally gotten started yet on like actual real levels, but everything else is going pretty good.
You already said that he comes highly recommended. I don't know if you've played through his Doom levels or anything at this point, but man, the guy's he's got like a way of thinking outside of the box and like coming up with different ways to play a game. Like for instance, this year's addition to his Christmas map pack thing, which was the first thing he ever did that I played, was like, okay, now we're like shooting ourselves out of cannons and like going in like hot air balloons in Doom and stuff. And there's like these custom monsters that he makes that are Christmas toys, like giant Christmas action figures. The whole level is like right out of a little kid's dream of
sounds very cool.
It's like small soldiers Doom.
Yeah.
Like the creativity that you're going to get out of him, I think is going to speak for itself.
And I think a lot of people really like that kind of outside the box thinking. It's like a lot of games will have like this one crazy level where it's like, it's like everything's giant or upside down or something like that. That seems to really resonate with a lot of people. So yeah, if we can do stuff like that, that's really cool.
I'm digging it. I'm looking forward to what you guys end up coming out with.
Well, it might end up being a while, because I mean it's going to be side project at best. I'm going to have to dig deep to get back on get back to work. But because that's the thing about it, like being a side project. It's like you don't necessarily have like the fire of like, oh my god, we go under if this doesn't come out and do well, and it's So
doing it for the passion of doing it, not because you have to, because your life depends on it. That kind of
yeah. And it's as we've just been discussing. It can be tough to find the motivation sometimes. When things haven't necessarily gone well in the past.
You're preaching to the choir, dude. But
yeah,
still here.
A year going strong.
Well, yeah, but it's like not. I guess it's just the holiday season. We're talking, early January. I don't know when this will get released, but like, it is tough. Like when you kind of get burnt out on something, and I'm not saying I'm burnt out on the keep or any of this shit necessarily. It's just that there's these periods of time when it's like, okay, all I do all day is this one thing. Think about this all the time. Every waking moment is this thing. And, you got to step away and reevaluate, okay, how do I really feel and all that sort of thing. And I want to do this 100%, but I'm just saying, I understand the feeling of like, okay, reassess, step away, come up with a new game plan, that kind of thing. It's part of it.
Yeah.
And I think everyone goes through that, and not a lot of people acknowledge it.
Yep. And yeah, like I'm there with you. It's like every time I go to work on this, it's like, why should I kill myself to, slave away on this if like no one's going to care about it? And it's like, and then you realize it's like, oh yeah, because I love doing it.
Because you're compelled to.
Yeah. And by the way, if you do a good job with it, that passion comes through and people can see that and they will care about it. Mm-hmm. And like, as long as it's not a tower defense game, then, there's some hope people will like it. So
yeah, we'll figure it out. Over time, it will be figured out. I have great faith in that, man. Any lessons learned, though, that you want to pass on before we get out of here?
I just want to hammer home something, I mentioned before, but, it's important to know, like, what's good about what you're doing. Like, people, we human beings, we're very negative. It's like, the old saying is like, if it bleeds, it leads, like for the news and stuff. But it's sometimes we lose focus of like, the things that like are appealing and hook people in the first place. And, it's, I wish I'd focused on that more instead of trying to like redo things and, try and fix all the problems. I wish I was more focused on the positive elements and, kind of try to focus in on those and hammer those home. But, hey, that's something that goes for a lot more than just, making classic shooter video games. It's any kind of project or anything. It's important to know why you're doing it and what the appeal is.
I don't know. I've always kind of felt like the classic shooter or the retro shooter tag is disingenuous, and I'm trying to step away from that. In fact, I think this episode will be the first one that doesn't have me saying that at the beginning of the podcast, because I feel I want to step away from that. Like, let's just say shooters or first person shooters or whatever, because it doesn't matter that it has this like the classic retro thing doesn't have to be part of that. It can still be great and not have to be crammed into that tiny little genre.
Yeah.
It's
like when I was trying to, I was trying to like market Wrack and everything, it's like, I almost thought like like, oh, it's an old school, it's a retro. Like I almost thought that was like insulting. It's like, yeah, no, it's just a good game that exists now. Like we're not necessarily trying to, appeal to like nostalgia, or like this could be something that like coexists with like shooters, like Call of Duty style shooters. Like what does this have to be like something that's like a relic of the past or something? Like right. It's almost like insulting. It's like, no, it's just a good game with like this different set of mechanics. So I always try to call it like an arcade style shooter. That's what I went with. But
yeah,
I also wanted to call it old school, classic, retro. So I'm like, whatever, I'll go with it.
It just, I don't know. It's just a way, it's a marketing way of communicating the idea that you're trying to get across, which is like, it has X, Y, and Z things that you're looking for.
It's like a branding thing.
Yeah. I don't like it. It just feels gross. It feels dirty. And I'm guilty of it just as much as everybody else is. But I feel over time, I've kind of gotten more and more. Like I can stand them all on two legs. I don't need to fucking tag everything with retro shooter or whatever. Like,
right. Well, good for you. You know, yeah, I think that helps. I think it helps. I think it's good for the genre too. You know, kind of not use those kind of ageist tags on it. But you know, it's like we don't call it like platformers like old Mario game. You know, it's like we don't do that. Like we just call it a platformer, and there's old platformers and new platformers, and
yeah. Or say how many
old
bits,
shooters and new shooters. So.
How many bits does it have? This 16-bit platformer. All right, I know exactly what I'm gonna get. Don't worry about it. Okay, man. I guess I don't really have any other questions for you. If you want to close out by saying anything, that's cool. But I just want to say before we do that thank you very much for coming back on the show. I've been clawing at myself for the entire time. We haven't talked since QuakeCon, so I'm glad we did it.
I'm glad we did. I'm glad we talked too, and I'm glad you didn't have to be whisked away to cast any events this time. But I just you know, everyone out there, I'm glad that I've made some kind of impact on your lives. You know, it's been a blast for me. You know, I had a great time with Skulltag. I had a great time with the community and building something really cool. And you know, we did that to some degree with Wrack. You know, it's like, I mean, geez, the fact that you know, we built an engine from scratch, and like, you know, a whole game and all that from scratch, and got Bobby Prince into the music. Like, all that was incredible.
Bobby Prince.
Yeah, dude, that was awesome. But it's just all been a blast, and you know, I hope to not be done with it all completely. You know, I'm still hoping for, fingers crossed, still hoping for, you know, something to happen with Final Boss down the line. But yeah, you know, I just thank you all out there. You know, I'm touched that apparently my name has come up as much as it has. So
a lot more than
it's great to have an impact.
Go back and listen to like the last, I don't know, like 10 episodes, and just comb for like, if there was some way you could control F your name and audio, you'd be disturbed. You'd be like, oh shit.
I'm sure that's possible. You know, it's like apparently like you can search like images like on Google. I'm just like, what? How does that make any sense? But you know, apparently that's a thing. It's like probably can with like audio too. I mean, it's like hell. It's like YouTube like builds like a closed captioning like just from the audio. So like, it's theoretically possible.
We'll see what happens, dude.
Yeah.
Until then. Let me know when you're ready for part 3, which, well, you know, could be years from now, I guess. It's a passion project on the side, but whatever happens, happens. Or if you get some big connections at Ubisoft and you want to bring them my way, that's cool too. But I mean, no expectations.
Can I share this real quick before we go? So the whole reason like I'm going to be working at Ubisoft is because like a guy who works there who's like a fan of mine. Is this guy Formulac, but he's friends with he's one of the guys who was working on the old school shooter Wrecked #Wrecked, which was I think it's like still in development, but you know, it's been something like, you know, that they were working on with around the same time period of Wrack, but you know, like very Quake style, like movement and all that. But you know, it's like just it's a small world, and you know, it just goes to show, you know, it's like you know, it's, I don't know. I forget what my point was.
Anything is possible.
That was cool. You know, like anything's possible. Yeah.